The alarm screamed through every corridor of Kepler Station. Commander Thisara pressed her webbed hands against the control panel, watching the displays with growing horror. 30 massive ships hung in the darkness outside their home, each one bristling with weapons that could tear the mining station apart. "How long until the shields fail?" she asked her chief engineer. 2 hours, maybe less," Kelrin replied, his gill slits fluttering with fear. "These aren't military ships attacking us. These are Void Reapers." Thisara felt her heart sink. Every creature in the galaxy knew that name. The Void Reapers took what they wanted and left nothing behind. No survivors. No witnesses. No mercy. Kepler Station was home to 30,000 Zephyrians. They were miners, engineers, and their families. They had come to this remote corner of space to harvest rare crystals from the asteroid belt. The work was hard but peaceful. The Zephyrians were not warriors. Their people had given up violence centuries ago, choosing to build rather than destroy. "Send another distress signal," Thisara ordered. "Maximum power. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Commander, we've been sending signals for 6 hours," her communications officer said softly. "The Galactic Council received our messages. So did the Terran Federation, the Altarian Republic, and 12 other governments. And they all said the same thing. Kepler Station is too far from civilized space. Too dangerous to send help. We're on our own." The station shook as another volley of plasma fire struck their shields. Through the observation deck windows, Thisara could see the enemy ships moving closer. They looked like metal predators, all sharp edges and glowing weapon ports. The largest ship, the flagship, was bigger than their entire station. "What about our defense drones?" Thisara asked. "All destroyed in the first attack," Kelrin reported. "They lasted maybe 10 minutes. Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance people were screaming." Thisara closed her eyes and tried to think. Her people were counting on her, but what could she do? The Zephyrians had no warships, no weapons that could hurt the Reapers. They were helpless. "Commander," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the Reaper flagship." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the enemy ship. The creature standing in the center was massive and covered in scars. His species was unknown to Thisara, but she could see the cruelty in his red eyes. "I am Captain Morgest of the Void Reapers," the creature said in a voice like grinding metal. "You will lower your shields and prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in the immediate death of 10 civilians." "We have nothing you want," Thisara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're just miners." Morgast laughed, a terrible sound that made her skin crawl. "You have everything we want. Your bioneural implants sell for a fortune on the black market. Your children will make fine slaves. Your station has rare metal that we can strip and sell. And your suffering will provide entertainment for my crew." The transmission ended. Thisara stared at the blank screen, feeling completely helpless. Around her, the bridge crew looked to her for orders, but what orders could she give? They had no weapons, no way to fight back. "How long until the shields fail completely?" she asked again. 1 hour and 40 minutes, Kelrin answered. Thisara nodded and walked to the communication station. She began typing a message, her fingers shaking. If her people were going to die, at least someone should know what happened to them. "This is Commander Thisara of Kepler Station," she recorded. "We are under attack by Void Reapers. 30,000 civilians are trapped here with no way to escape. Our ships were destroyed in the first wave. Our defenses are failing. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. If anyone receives this message, please remember us. Remember that we tried to live in peace." She sent the message, broadcasting in all directions, knowing it would probably never reach anyone who cared. The nearest inhabited system was 3 days away by the fastest ship. Even if someone wanted to help, they would arrive too late to find anything but wreckage. The station shook again, harder this time. Through the windows, she could see pieces of their outer hull floating away into space. The shields were failing faster than predicted. "Commander," her security chief reported over the comm system. "The Reapers are launching boarding pods. They're trying to attach to our lower sections." "Seal all the blast doors," Thisara ordered. "Move everyone to the central core. Make them fight for every corridor." But she knew it was hopeless. Her security teams had training weapons and crowd control equipment. The Void Reapers were professional killers with military-grade armor and weapons. It would not even be a fair fight. Parents were gathering their children and running toward the station's heart. The elderly were being helped by younger Zephyrians who should have been living full lives, not preparing to die. Everyone moved with the calm dignity of her people, but Thyssera could see the fear in their large dark eyes. "Commander," Kelrin said quietly, "my family is in Section 12. The Reapers just breached the hull there." Thyssera put her hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry," they both knew what that meant. Section 12 would be the first area the Reapers would harvest. They would take what they wanted and kill the rest. Kelrin's wife and 2 young children were there, along with 3,000 other innocent people. The lights went out suddenly, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. The shield generators had finally failed completely. Through the windows, Thyssera could see dozens of small attack ships swarming toward the station like angry insects. "Send one final message," she told her communications officer. "Full power. Every frequency." What should it say? Thyssera looked around at her brave crew, then at the thousands of families taking shelter in the station's core. Her people deserved better than this. They deserved to live, to raise their children, to continue their peaceful existence among the stars. "To anyone who can hear this," she said into the recorder, "this is Kepler Station. We are 30,000 souls about to die because no one cared enough to save us. We are not warriors, but we are not cowards either. If you find our bodies, know that we faced our end with honor, and if you have the power to stop such things from happening to others, please use it." She sent the message, then sat down in her command chair to wait. Outside, the Reaper ships were moving into position around the station. Soon they would begin their terrible work. Thyssera closed her eyes and thought about her homeworld with its vast oceans and crystal cities beneath the waves. She thought about her daughter, safe in the university system far away. At least some of their people would survive to remember Kepler Station. The first explosion echoed through the corridors below. The Void Reapers had begun their harvest. Captain Elena Vasquez floated in the zero gravity of her ship's cargo bay, checking the medical supplies they were carrying to the frontier colonies. The Determination was not a pretty ship. She was old, patched in dozens of places, and her engines made strange noises that worried the crew. But she was reliable, and more importantly, she was theirs. "Captain," came a voice over the comm system, "you need to come to the bridge. We're picking up something strange." Elena pushed off from the cargo container and glided toward the exit. In the low-gravity sections of the ship, moving was easy for someone who had spent most of her life in space. She had been born on a mining ship like this one, back when humanity was just beginning to explore beyond their home system. The bridge of the Determination was cramped and filled with equipment that was older than some of the crew. Elena's people had learned to make do with whatever they could find or build themselves. Other species in the galaxy had advanced technology that seemed like magic, but humans had something else: the ability to make broken things work and turn junk into tools. "What do you have, Chen?" Elena asked her navigation officer. Lieutenant Chen was young, maybe 25, with the quick hands and sharp eyes that made him good at his job. He was frowning at his instruments, adjusting settings, and shaking his head. "It's a distress signal, Captain. Very weak and breaking up badly, but I think it's coming from the outer rim." Elena moved to look over his shoulder. The outer rim was the edge of known space where pirates and criminals went to hide. No government claimed it, and few merchant ships traveled there. It was dangerous and mostly empty. "How far out?" she asked. "Maybe 4 days at maximum speed. The signal is so weak I can barely make it out." "But Captain, I think there are a lot of people in trouble." Elena studied the readout. She could see fragments of the message, pieces of words and numbers that made no sense by themselves. But there was something about the signal that bothered her. It felt desperate, like a person drowning and calling for help. "Can you clean it up? Make it clearer?" Chen worked at his controls for several minutes. Slowly, the static began to fade, and voices emerged from the noise. They were speaking in the musical language of the Zephyrians, but the computer could translate most of it. "This is Kepler Station. Under attack. 30,000 civilians. Please help us." The message repeated several times, then cut to static. Elena felt a chill run through her body. 30,000 people, families, children. "Keep trying to clean up the signal," she ordered. "I want to hear everything they said." Elena went to her small office next to the bridge and pulled up what information she could find about Kepler Station. It was listed as a mining colony in the databases, far from any major shipping routes or military bases. The population was mostly Zephyrians, a peaceful species that had never bothered anyone. 20 minutes later, Chen called her back to the bridge. I've got most of the message cleaned up, Captain. You're not going to like it. He played the recording. Elena listened to Commander Thesara's calm voice describing the attack, the Void Reapers, and the abandonment by the Galactic Council. When it was finished, the bridge was completely quiet. How old is this signal? Elena asked. Based on the distance and transmission delay, I'd say it was sent about 18 hours ago. Elena looked around at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her decision. The Determination carried a crew of 200 humans, most of them cargo haulers and miners like herself. They were not soldiers or heroes. They were just people trying to make a living in a dangerous galaxy. Captain, her engineer Rodriguez, spoke up. The Reapers are bad news. Everyone knows that. If they're attacking a station with 30,000 people, those people will be dead by the time anyone gets there, finished her weapons officer Thompson. Elena nodded. She knew they were right. Even if she turned the ship around right now and pushed the engines to their maximum, they would not arrive for 4 days. The Zephyrians would be long dead by then, but she kept thinking about the voice in the message. Commander Thesara had sounded so calm, so resigned to death. She had not begged or screamed. She had simply asked someone to remember her people, 30,000 innocent lives, and the galaxy had abandoned them because it was not convenient to help. Chen, how fast could we get there if we pushed everything to maximum and made some dangerous jumps? Chen calculated for a moment. Maybe 3 days if we're lucky and the engines don't explode. But Captain, we're a cargo ship. We've got some defensive weapons, but nothing that could fight the Void Reapers. And even if we could, Thompson added, there are probably dozens of Reaper ships. We'd just be adding 200 human bodies to the pile. Elena walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Humanity was new to this part of the galaxy. Most species saw them as primitive barbarians who had barely learned to build starships. Earth was just one small world on the edge of civilized space, and humans were not part of any major alliance or government. No one would blame her for continuing their mission. The medical supplies they carried would save lives at the frontier colonies. It was the practical choice, the smart choice. But Elena had not spent her life in space to make smart choices. She had become a ship captain because she believed in helping people even when it was difficult. Rodriguez, she called to her engineer. How much of our cargo is weapons and military equipment? About 30%, Captain. Medical supplies for the colonial militia. Nothing fancy but solid human-made gear. Elena smiled for the first time since hearing the distress signal. Humans might not have the advanced technology of other species, but they built things that worked in bad situations, and they had one advantage that no other species in the galaxy seemed to understand. They never gave up. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. Report to the main cargo bay in 10 minutes. We need to have a conversation. 10 minutes later, 200 faces were looking at her from the cargo bay floor. Elena had worked with most of these people for years. She knew their families, their hopes, their fears. They trusted her to make good decisions and bring them home safely. We've received a distress signal, she began, and played the cleaned-up recording from Kepler Station. When it finished, the cargo bay was silent, except for the humming of the ship's engines. Elena could see the shock and anger on their faces. These were good people, and the idea of 30,000 civilians being murdered by pirates made them sick. The smart choice is to continue our mission, Elena said. Kepler Station is 4 days away and the people there are probably already dead. We're not a warship and we can't fight the Void Reapers. She paused and looked around at their faces. But I'm not asking you to make the smart choice. I'm asking you to make the right choice. If we do nothing, those people will die knowing that the galaxy abandoned them. If we try to help, we'll probably die too. But maybe, just maybe, we can save some of them. Elena waited for someone to speak. Finally, Rodriguez stepped forward. Captain, how exactly would we fight a fleet of pirate ships? Elena grinned. With everything we've got and a few tricks they won't expect. Humans may not be the smartest or strongest species in the galaxy, but we're definitely the most stubborn. The crew began to laugh and cheer. Elena felt a warm feeling in her chest. These people understood what it meant to be human. When someone was in trouble, you helped them. It did not matter if it was dangerous or stupid or impossible. All right then, she announced. Let's go save some lives. The cargo bay of the Determination had been transformed into a workshop of organized chaos. Elena watched her crew work with the focused intensity that humans showed when lives were at stake. They had been traveling toward Kepler Station for 18 hours, and every person on the ship had found something to do. Rodriguez was supervising a team that was welding armor plates to the ship's hull. The plates had been part of their cargo, meant for a frontier colony's defense systems. Now they were being attached to their own ship with the kind of creative engineering that humans were famous for. "How's it looking?" Elena asked her chief engineer. "Well, Captain, the good news is we'll have some protection from small weapons fire," Rodriguez replied, sweat dripping from his face. "The bad news is we're adding a lot of weight to a ship that's already overloaded." "Will she still fly?" "Oh, she'll fly. The question is whether she'll fly fast enough to get us out of trouble." Across the bay, Thompson was training volunteers on the weapons they had found in their cargo. Most of the crew had basic military training, as did all human merchant spacers, but these people were not soldiers. They were engineers, mechanics, and cargo handlers who were learning to fight because it was necessary. "Remember," Thompson was telling a group of younger crew members, "these plasma rifles have a lot of kick. Brace yourself and aim for center mass. Don't try to be a hero. Stay together and watch each other's backs." Elena moved through the ship, checking on the various projects. In the engine room, Chief Petty Officer Kim was pushing their fusion reactor beyond its normal limits. The extra power would be needed for the weapons and shields they were installing. "How long can we run at this power level?" Elena asked. "Maybe 6 hours before we risk a core breach," Kim replied without looking up from her instruments. "But if we're still fighting after 6 hours, power problems will be the least of our worries." In the navigation section, Chen was working on the most dangerous part of their plan. He had calculated a series of hyperspace jumps that would get them to Kepler Station in 3 days instead of 4, but each jump was pushing their old navigation computer to its limits. "The final jump is the real problem, Captain," Chen explained, showing her his calculations. "To arrive in the right position, we'll need to make a blind jump through an area where no one has mapped the hyperspace currents. There's about a 30% chance we'll make it, and if we don't, we'll either drop out of hyperspace in the middle of a star, or we'll be scattered across several light years in very small pieces." Elena studied the numbers. 70% chance of death just to get to the battle. Even if they survived the jump, they would face the Void Reapers with a converted cargo ship and 200 people who were brave but not trained for this kind of fight. "Do it," she said. Chen nodded and began programming the navigation system. Elena could see his hands shaking slightly as he worked. She felt the same fear, but she also felt something else. Determination. Humans had survived and prospered in a hostile galaxy by refusing to give up, even when the odds were impossible. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a message from Kepler Station. It's very weak." Elena rushed to the communication station. The message was broken and full of static, but she could make out enough words to understand. The Void Reapers had boarded the station. They were taking prisoners and killing anyone who resisted. The situation was exactly as bad as she had feared. "How many people are still alive?" she asked. "Hard to tell, Captain. Maybe 20,000. The Reapers are working their way through the station section by section." Elena felt sick. 10,000 people were already dead, and more were dying every hour. Even if her plan worked perfectly, they might arrive too late to save anyone. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We've received another message from Kepler Station. The situation is bad and getting worse. In 2 hours, we'll make our final jump. After that, there's no turning back." She paused, looking around at the faces watching her from throughout the ship. "I want everyone to understand what we're doing. We're about to attack a fleet of pirate ships with a converted cargo hauler and weapons we jury-rigged in a day and a half. The smart money says we're all going to die." Elena could hear nervous laughter from several crew members. "But here's the thing about the smart money. It's never won a fight against humans. We don't do this because we think we'll win. We do this because it's right. Because when innocent people are dying and no one else will help, humans step up." She walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. "Our species has been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped us out. We've done it by refusing to give up, by helping each other, and by believing that no situation is hopeless as long as someone is willing to fight." Elena turned back to face her crew. "The Zephyrians are dying because the galaxy decided they weren't worth saving. But we're humans, and we don't abandon people. Not ever." The crew began to cheer and applaud. Elena felt tears in her eyes as she watched these ordinary people prepare to risk everything for strangers they had never met. 1 hour until the final jump, Chen announced. All hands should record personal messages and secure for hyperspace transition. Elena went to her quarters and sat down at her small desk. She activated the recording system and looked into the camera. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the cargo ship Determination. If you're watching this, it probably means our rescue mission failed and we're all dead. She paused, thinking about what she wanted to say. I want everyone to know that we died trying to do the right thing. 200 humans gave their lives attempting to save 30,000 Zephyrians who had been abandoned by their government and ignored by the galaxy. Elena looked at the picture on her desk, showing her parents and younger brother back on Earth. Mom, Dad, I know you'll worry about me, but don't be sad. I lived the life I wanted to live, and I died trying to help people. That's all anyone can ask for. She ended the recording and secured it in the ship's databanks. If the Determination was destroyed, the message would be automatically transmitted to human space. 30 minutes to jump. Chen's voice echoed through the ship. Elena returned to the bridge and strapped herself into her command chair. Around her, the crew was making final preparations. Rodriguez reported that all weapons were online and functioning. Thompson confirmed that the boarding teams were ready. Kim announced that the engines were running at maximum power. 10 minutes to jump, Chen said. All hands secure for hyperspace transition. Elena looked around at her bridge crew. These were good people, brave people who deserved to live long lives and see their families again. Instead, they were about to risk everything for strangers. 5 minutes to jump. Elena activated the ship's internal communication system one final time. This is your captain. In 5 minutes, we jump to Kepler Station. When we arrive, we'll face odds that no sane person would take on. But we're not doing this because we're insane. We're doing this because we're human. 2 minutes to jump. All hands brace for transition. Elena gripped the arms of her chair and watched the countdown timer. When it reached 0, Chen activated the hyperspace drive, and reality twisted around them. For a moment, that felt like forever. The Determination existed in the space between spaces, where physics had no meaning and time moved in impossible directions. Elena had made hundreds of hyperspace jumps in her career, but this one felt different. This one felt like stepping off a cliff and hoping someone had built a bridge. Then with a sound like thunder, they dropped back into normal space. Jump complete, Chen reported. We made it, Captain. Kepler Station is 2 hours away at maximum speed. Elena looked around at her crew. They had survived the impossible jump. Now came the really hard part. All hands, battle stations, she ordered. Time to show these pirates what humans can do. Captain Morgast stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Blood Harvest, watching his crew work their way through Kepler Station. The operation was going perfectly. His ships had the mining station surrounded, and his boarding teams were systematically harvesting everything of value. The Zephyrians had put up no real resistance. As expected from such a weak species, they had retreated to their inner sanctum and were simply waiting to die. Morgast had raided dozens of their colonies over the years, and it was always the same. A few token defensive moves, then surrender. Status report, he growled to his lieutenant. Section 12 is completely cleared, the smaller alien reported. 3,000 prisoners taken for the slave markets. We've also harvested about 500 bio-neural implants. Good. How much longer until we breach their central core? 2 hours, maybe less. The Zephyrians sealed the blast doors, but our plasma cutters are making steady progress. Morgast smiled, showing teeth that had been filed to sharp points. This raid would make him rich. The bio-neural implants alone were worth millions of credits, and the slaves would sell well in the outer markets. Festival. Kepler Station was so remote that no one would ever know what happened here. Captain, his sensor operator called out suddenly. I'm detecting a hyperspace emergence. Something just jumped in at the edge of the system. Morgast turned to look at the tactical display. A single ship had appeared on his screens, moving toward them at high speed. It was small and looked old, probably another cargo hauler that had stumbled into his operation by accident. Species, he asked. Unknown, Captain. The ship design doesn't match any known military vessels. It looks like a converted cargo ship? Morgast laughed. Someone was either very brave or very stupid to interrupt his operation. Either way, they would die quickly and painfully. Hail them, he ordered. Let them know what they've wandered into. The communication system crackled to life and a human face appeared on the main screen. Morgast had heard of humans but had never seen one before. They looked weak and primitive, with soft skin and small teeth. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the merchant vessel Determination," the human said. "You will cease your attack on Kepler Station immediately and release all prisoners." Morgast and his bridge crew burst into laughter. A single cargo ship was demanding that he stop his operation? The arrogance was amusing. "Human," Morgast replied, "you have made a terrible mistake. I am Captain Morgast of the Void Reapers. I have 30 warships under my command and you have wandered into the middle of our harvest. Leave now and I might let you live." The human's face showed no fear, which surprised Morgast. Most species would be begging for their lives by now. "I don't think you understand," Captain Vasquez said calmly. "We didn't wander into anything. We came here specifically to stop you. Last chance to surrender." Morgast stopped laughing. The human was either insane or had some hidden advantage he couldn't see. He quickly scanned his sensors again, looking for additional ships or hidden weapons, but found nothing. Just one old cargo hauler against his entire fleet. "You're outnumbered 30-1, he pointed out. "What exactly do you think you can accomplish?" The human smiled, and Morgast felt a strange chill run down his spine. "We're about to show you something that no one else in the galaxy seems to understand," Captain Vasquez replied. "When humans say no, we mean it." The transmission ended and Morgast watched as the human ship accelerated toward his fleet. It was moving faster than should have been possible for a cargo vessel, and he could see that it had been modified with additional armor and weapons. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "Destroy that cargo hauler." His fleet moved to intercept the Determination, confident that the battle would be over in minutes. Morgast had fought many species over the years, and he knew that most of them followed predictable patterns. They would try to maintain distance, use advanced tactics, and retreat when things got difficult. The humans did none of those things. Instead of slowing down or trying to maneuver around his ships, the Determination accelerated directly toward the center of his formation. At the last possible moment, it opened fire with every weapon it had, targeting his closest destroyer with a barrage of plasma bolts and missile fire. The destroyer's shields flared and collapsed under the unexpected assault. Before Morgast could react, the human ship rammed straight through his formation, using the wreckage of the destroyed vessel as cover, while it continued toward Kepler Station. "What are they doing?" his lieutenant asked in confusion. Morgast was wondering the same thing. The Determination was now surrounded by his remaining ships and taking fire from all sides. Its shields were failing, and sections of its hull were beginning to glow from the heat of energy weapons. Any sane captain would have retreated or surrendered by now. Instead, the human ship launched a spread of boarding pods. "They're trying to board us," the sensor operator reported in shock. "Impossible," Morgast snarled. "No one is stupid enough to board a ship in the middle of a fleet engagement." But the tactical display showed dozens of small pods spreading out from the Determination, each one heading for a different Reaper vessel. Half of them were destroyed by defensive fire, but the others reached their targets and attached to hull sections. "Boarding teams have breached ships 7, 12, and 15, his communications officer reported. "They're fighting in the corridors." Morgast couldn't believe what he was hearing. The humans were actually boarding his ships during a space battle. It was the most insane military tactic he had ever encountered. "Captain," came a voice over the comm system from one of his ship commanders. "These humans fight like animals. They're not following any rules of engagement." Through his tactical displays, Morgast could see the chaos spreading through his fleet. The human boarding teams were small, maybe 10 or 12 people per ship, but they were causing massive disruption. Instead of trying to capture strategic locations, they were simply destroying everything they could find: life support systems, weapon controls, engine components, all ships. "Concentrate fire on the human vessel," he ordered. "Ignore the boarding teams and destroy their ship." But the Determination refused to die. Even as plasma fire tore chunks from its hull and explosions erupted across its surface, it kept moving and fighting. Elena Vasquez was using her ship like a weapon, ramming smaller vessels and using the debris field around Kepler Station as cover. "Captain," his lieutenant reported with growing panic in his voice. "Ship 12 just lost life support. Ship 7's engines are offline. Ship 15 is reporting fires on all decks." Morgast realized with growing horror that his disciplined fleet was falling apart. His ships were designed to fight other warships in organized battles, not to deal with maniacs who treated their own vessel like a missile and boarded enemy ships in the middle of combat. "Sir," came another voice over the comm, this one from inside Kepler's station. "The Zephyrians have started fighting back. They're using mining equipment as weapons and attacking our boarding teams." Morgast felt his confidence cracking. The Zephyrians had been passive and helpless for 3 days. What had changed? Through his observation window, he could see the answer. The Determination was positioned between his fleet and the station, using itself as a shield to protect the mining facility. The human ship was barely holding together, but it was still fighting with a fury that Morgast had never encountered before. The sight of humans willing to die for complete strangers had inspired the Zephyrians to fight back. They might not be warriors, but they had tools and knowledge of their own station. Combined with human weapons and tactics, they were becoming a serious problem. "Ship 7 is requesting permission to withdraw for repairs," his communications officer reported. "So are ships 12 and 19. "Denied," Morgast roared. "We outnumber them 30-1. How can one cargo ship be causing this much trouble?" He watched as the Determination launched another wave of boarding pods while simultaneously ramming one of his frigates. The human ship was trailing atmosphere and debris, its hull glowing red from weapon impacts, but it showed no signs of stopping. "Captain," his lieutenant said quietly, "maybe we should consider withdrawing. This isn't worth losing half our fleet over one mining station." Morgast turned on his subordinate with fury in his eyes. "We are Void Reapers. We do not retreat from cargo haulers." But even as he said the words, Morgast could see his fleet beginning to fall apart. 3 of his ships were already crippled, and the others were taking damage from the relentless human assault. The boarding teams inside his vessels were systematically destroying critical systems, and the Zephyrians on the station were mounting increasingly effective resistance. "Sir," the communications officer called out urgently, "I'm receiving surrender requests from the boarding teams on the station. They're saying the Zephyrians are using industrial plasma cutters as weapons and the humans are coordinating their defense." Morgast stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His professional pirates, armed with military weapons and body armor, were being driven back by miners with construction tools and a handful of humans who had appeared from nowhere. The Determination was still fighting, even though it should have been destroyed 10 minutes ago. Captain Vasquez was using tactics that made no sense, ramming maneuvers that should Helena Vasquez floated in the medical bay of the Determination, watching Dr. Sarah Chen work on the wounded. The ship was quiet now, with only the hum of life support systems and the occasional groan of stressed metal. Through the porthole she could see Kepler Station, damaged but still intact. They had won somehow. "How many?" Helena asked quietly. 43 dead, 96 wounded, Dr. Chen replied without looking up from her patient. "Considering what we just did, Captain, we got off easy." Elena nodded, though she didn't feel like they had gotten off easy. 43 good people had died fighting pirates who should never have been their problem, but they had saved the station and most of its people. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with soot and his uniform torn. "Captain, the Zephyrians are requesting permission to come aboard. Their commander wants to speak with you." "How's the ship holding up?" Elena asked as they walked toward the docking bay. "Well, she'll never win any beauty contests, but she'll get us home," Rodriguez replied with a tired grin. "The crew did good work, Captain. I've never seen people fight like that before." Elena felt a surge of pride as they passed through the corridors. Her crew was exhausted and injured, but they were moving with purpose, helping the wounded and repairing damage. They had faced impossible odds and won through sheer determination and refusal to give up. The docking bay was crowded with Zephyrians who had been rescued from the pirate ships. Many were injured and all looked traumatized, but they were alive. Elena could see human crew members sharing their food and medical supplies with the alien refugees. Commander Thesara was waiting by the airlock, accompanied by several other Zephyrians. Elena had heard her voice in the distress signals, but seeing her in person was different. The Zephyrian commander was tall and graceful, with the large dark eyes and blue-green skin of her species. But Elena could see the weight of leadership and loss in her expression. "Captain Vasquez," Thesara said in accented but clear English. "I am Commander Thesara of Kepler Station. I do not have words sufficient to thank you for what you have done." Elena felt uncomfortable with the formal gratitude. "We just did what anyone would do, Commander. We heard people in trouble and came to help." Thisara's large eyes widened in surprise. Captain, with respect, that is not true. We sent distress signals to 12 different governments and spacefaring species. They all received our messages. They all chose not to come. Elena looked around at the mixed group of humans and Zephyrians working together in the docking bay. Then they made the wrong choice. How many of your people died saving us? Thisara asked softly. 43, Elena replied. Thisara closed her eyes for a moment, and Elena could see her struggle with emotion. 43 humans died for 30,000 Zephyrians they had never met. Your species came here with one old cargo ship to fight 30 pirate vessels. Why? Elena considered the question. Because it was the right thing to do. Because when someone calls for help, you answer. Because no one should die alone and abandoned. The rest of the galaxy does not think as you do, Thisara said. They calculate costs and benefits. They consider strategic value and political consequences. They make what they call rational decisions. Maybe that's their problem, Elena replied. Sometimes the rational decision isn't the human decision. Over the next several hours, Elena worked with Thisara to coordinate rescue efforts and treat the wounded. She was amazed by how quickly her crew adapted to working with the Zephyrians. Despite the language barriers and cultural differences, humans and aliens were cooperating as if they had been partners for years. Thompson was teaching Zephyrian security officers how to use human weapons, while Chen was working with Zephyrian engineers to repair the station's communication systems. Rodriguez had half his engineering team helping restore the station's life support, while the other half kept the determination from falling apart. Captain, Chen called out from the communication station they had set up in the cargo bay. We're receiving messages from all over the galaxy. Word about the battle is spreading fast. Elena looked at the communication logs and felt a chill. News of the fight had reached major population centers across known space. Every government, news organization, and military force in the galaxy was suddenly interested in Kepler Station. What are they saying? She asked. Chen scrolled through the messages. Mixed reactions, Captain. Some are calling us heroes. Others are saying we interfered in affairs that weren't our business. The Galactic Council is demanding a full report on why humans took unilateral action in neutral space. Elena snorted with disgust. Where was the Galactic Council when the Reapers were murdering civilians? The Terran colonial government is sending a diplomatic team, Chen continued. They want to discuss the implications of human military action in non-aligned space. Captain, Thisara approached with a datapad in her hands. I have been recording testimonies from the survivors. Would you like to hear what they are saying about your crew? Elena nodded, and Thisara activated the recording device. Voices began to speak in the musical language of the Zephyrians, with computer translations appearing as text. The humans fought like they were defending their own families, said one survivor. They shared their food with us even though they were wounded and tired. I saw a human female carry 3 of our children to safety while under fire from the pirates, said another. She was bleeding from her injuries but would not stop until the children were safe. When the pirates broke through our defenses, the humans stood with us. They did not retreat or abandon us. They fought beside us even though we are strangers to them. Elena felt tears in her eyes as she listened to the testimonies. These people understood what the rest of the galaxy seemed to miss. Humans didn't help others because it was profitable or strategic. They helped because it was right. Captain, Rodriguez approached with a concerned expression. We're receiving a message from a Galactic Council cruiser. They're demanding that we remain here until their investigators arrive. Elena looked out at the stars where she could see the running lights of approaching ships. Word of the battle had spread, and now everyone wanted to claim a piece of the victory or assign blame for the violations of interstellar law. Chen, how long until we can make hyperspace? She asked. Engines are ready now, Captain, but the hull repairs aren't complete. We might not survive another long-distance jump. Elena considered her options. She could stay and face interrogation from the Galactic Council, probably ending up charged with violating neutrality laws and unauthorized military action, or she could leave and let the politicians argue among themselves. Commander Thisara, she said, are your people safe now? Yes, Captain. Our defense systems are online and rescue ships are already approaching from our homeworlds. Elena nodded. Then our job here is done. She activated the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We're going home. As the determination powered up her engines and prepared to leave, Elena received one final message from Thisara. Captain Vasquez, the Zephyrian commander, said, "I want you to know that this day will be remembered in our history. Not just the battle, but what it represents. A species that travels across the galaxy to help strangers. A crew that risks everything because it is right. The galaxy is a better place because humans like you exist." Elena smiled as her ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying her crew home. She knew that the politicians and diplomats would spend months arguing about what had happened at Kepler Station. They would write reports and hold hearings and try to fit the events into their neat categories of law and policy. But the survivors would remember something different. They would remember that when the galaxy abandoned them, humans came. When death seemed certain, humans fought beside them. When hope was lost, humans brought it back. 3 months later, Elena was sitting in her quarters aboard the new ship Defiance when Chen brought her a news report. The Galactic Council had officially invited humanity to join as full members, not junior partners. More importantly, they had created a new position: Galactic Peacekeeping Commander, responsible for protecting civilians in regions that other governments considered too dangerous or unprofitable to defend. "Congratulations, Admiral Vasquez," Chen said with a grin. "How does it feel to be in charge of keeping the peace in the galaxy's forgotten corners?" Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about all the distress signals that were probably being broadcast right now by people who had no hope of rescue. Somewhere out there, civilians were under attack by pirates, colonists were facing disasters, and innocent people were dying because no one cared enough to help. "It feels like we have a lot of work to do," she replied. The Defiance and her sister ships were already patrolling the outer rim, carrying the simple motto that had become humanity's promise to the galaxy: no one left behind. The legend of Kepler Station had become something more than a story of one battle. It had become the foundation of humanity's role in the galaxy, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the species that answered the call when hope was lost and help seemed impossible. And in the depths of space, wherever people faced darkness and Despair destroyed her own ship, we,